Good morning, everyone. Last Thursday morning, Alan Scott, a 20-year-old veteran of the MTA, was brutally attacked while serving our city. Slashed in the neck while performing a routine safety check in his conductor's cab. Luckily, a doctor was on board, just 2 cars back. He heard a man pleading for help, jumped into action, and literally saved his life. Over the weekend, a man was kicked onto the tracks at Penn Station. 3 people rushed to save him, pull him back into safety. That's the New York I know. When someone's in trouble, total strangers, they come to the rescue, no hesitation. That's the true heart of New York. And let me just be very, very clear. These brazen, heinous attacks on our subway system will not be tolerated. Over the last 6 days, I've held several meetings with top administration officials, City Hall, the mayor, and MTA leadership. I challenged everyone to find new ways to work together, to go after the repeat offenders that the mayor and I have talked consistently about, and I appreciate his effort on putting the spotlight on these individuals. We're focusing on repeat offenders, deterring crime, and protecting the people on our subways, our commuters, and also the unsung heroes of the MTA. This is something I've been laser focused on since taking office. Literally, the mayor was on the job 1 week, and the 2 of us were in the subways. Many, many other times we've stood together, trying to figure out different ways to make sure people feel safe on our subways, and indeed are safe on our subways. But I'm not here today to talk to you about numbers and tell you stats and statistics about what's going up or what's going down. I'm here to take action, because that's what the situation requires. Rattling off statistics, saying things are getting better, doesn't make you feel better. Especially when you've just heard about someone being slashed in the throat or thrown onto a subway tracks. There's a psychological impact. People worry they could be next. Anxiety takes hold. And riding the subway, which should just simply be part of your everyday life, is filled with stress and trepidation. And if you make a living as a transit worker, that is compounded exponentially, that level of stress. So I say this will not stand, not on my watch. So today, in the wake of these latest attacks, I'm unveiling a 5-point plan to rid our subways of people who commit crimes and to protect all New Yorkers, whether you're a commuter or a transit worker. Point 1, I'm redeploying nearly 1,000 members of the New York State Police, MTA Police, and MTA National Guard to conduct bag checks in the city's busiest transit stations, which is why I want to introduce the leadership team that is helping us get to this point. Jan Oliver, you'll be hearing from him momentarily. You've heard him speak many times about the challenges we face on the subway, and he is so committed to making sure that our subways are safe, and I applaud his leadership. We also have Thomas Taffy, the Chief of Operations for MTA Police. The MTA Police are a critical part of this answer. But also, we have Major General Shields. This is my team, the Army National Guard, and Superintendent Stephen James of the New York State Police. All of them have come together to help us figure out the resources that we can bring to this situation. So we'll be having 750 members of the New York National Guard, as well as another 250 personnel from state and MTA police. You'll start seeing them at the tables, making sure that weapons are not being brought in, working in concert with our New York State Police, as well as our NYPD. Because no one heading to their job or to visit family or to go to a doctor appointment should worry that the person sitting next to them possesses a deadly weapon. They shouldn't worry about whether someone's going to brandish a knife or gun. That's what we're going to do at these checkpoints. Number 2, I'm proposing that we amend New York State laws in this session, in a matter of weeks, to allow courts to ban anyone from riding the subway or taking a bus who's convicted of a violent crime against another passenger. Now, there's already a similar law in the books intended to protect personnel from the MTA. But that law has many loopholes that we've identified, and indeed, it's only been used 3 times since it was first enacted in 2020. We're going to get to the bottom of that, find out what's missing, what language is required. So basically, if you assault someone on the subways, you won't be on the subways. And a judge will now have the power to make sure that for at least 3 years, they'll have the ability to keep you off the subways. Now, this isn't some radical idea. Think about if you're convicted of a DWI. And a judge determines that you're a danger. Guess what? You're not riding on our roads. You're not able to drive a vehicle. You lose your license. It's the same principle right here. And I expect the judges to use that discretion. Point 3, we're strengthening the cooperation between the police who patrol the subways and the district attorneys who prosecute the crimes. This is something that came up at our meetings. The district attorneys need to know the full body of evidence that's out there with respect to these recidivists and repeat offenders, something that the mayor and I understand. Enhanced coordination will be a hallmark of our effort to drive down gun crime. It has been. That coordination has helped us drive down gun crime. We spoke about that earlier this week up in Albany. Also helped us deal with car thefts, driving down those crimes as well. I believe it can work on the subways as well. A couple of components. Effective immediately, the MTA will work with the district attorneys and the NYPD to create a new early warning system for repeat offenders. We know who they are. They'll flag the criminal history at the time of arrest, so it can be fully considered when decisions regarding charging and bail are made. Second, we're establishing regular meetings between the police on the subways and the district attorneys. We'll hold them at the Crime Analysis Center right here in New York City. Again, bringing people together, sharing data, making sure there's accountability. And let me explain why that's significant. These meetings will give a regular forum for police and DAs to get the full picture of someone who's charged with a crime. Have the police had run-ins with them before? The police certainly know. Are they constantly causing trouble? Are they menacing to others? I want DAs to have all the background and information they need to make a strong case before a judge in court. This will make sure that the repeat offenders are dealt with accordingly. Again, I need the judges to uphold their end of the bargain. They're an important part of this. Last year, we gave judges more discretion. You all know the budget was 1 month late because I held it up to make sure I could get the discretion back to judges that they no longer would simply use the least restrictive means when considering bail. That is history. That is not the law. It has come to my attention that there are still some judges applying that standard. So, we're talking to the Office of Court Administration, enhancing education, saying, no, the law has since changed. It has gone into effect, and that would be having gone into effect since May of 2023. So I'm anticipating that we'll see a change in results when you look 1 year from now, but these new laws have only been in place less than a year. So I'm just saying to the judges, use the tools that we've now given you to protect New Yorkers. Point 4 is about protecting our transit workers. If a camera had been positioned on Alton Scott's conductor cabin last Thursday, we probably would have already apprehended the person who slashed his neck. Or maybe they wouldn't have done it at all if they knew there were cameras watching their every move. Now, I've already pushed the MTA to speed up the installation of cameras in subway cars, and thank you for your commitment to do that. We've shaved off many, many months, and every month is going to make a difference. They'll all be completed by the end of this year, not the longer period that had been first talked about. And I think that's an essential deterrent. If someone who's going to do harm to someone else knows that is being recorded, that there's cameras watching them, they might just think twice about it. But also, if they go forth with committing a crime, we'll have the evidence to make sure they don't do it again. But also, there's a blind spot in the cabin. And that's why today I'm directing the MTA to install cameras in every single conductor cabin, as well as the platforms that face the cabins. Now, these transit workers, they have hard jobs, a lot of uncertainty, especially in light of the recent increases in crimes on the subways that they have seen. They keep our city running morning, noon, and night, and they deserve every level of protection to offer. The information gathered on the cameras will simply be used to aid in the prosecution of anyone who commits an offense. Point 5 is we're expanding the joint MTA and New York City run pilot program. It's called SCOUT. You may have heard of it. It stands for Subway Co-Response Outreach Teams. Now, these are led by mental health clinicians, but here's the difference between them and the SOS teams that I've talked about. These teams are also backed up by the police. They have police officers along for backup, and they only deal with individuals having the most severe mental health crises, those that our SOS mental health teams cannot safely approach without police support. These are literally the people who can pose danger to themselves or to others, and it is evident. So these teams will work to get them out of the subways. They already are there, get them services and support. And if something bad happens, they can use force if necessary to have them removed from the subway. In many cases, it means getting them into the psychiatric hospitals. You know, I've had a lot of effort trying to open up more beds so they're available. And also, we have 2 of these teams in place right now. Today, I'm announcing an additional $20 million to have up to 10 more teams by the end of next year. Now, this is, again, in addition to our SOS teams, which have been doing tremendous work. I've met them many times. We've had them into our office. They've moved more than 350 struggling New Yorkers off the streets and into stable housing, the result that we were looking for, and it's getting better. People feel the difference. So, to recap our 5-point plan, bag checks will be conducted by over 1,000 members of the New York State Police, MTA Police, National Guard. In addition to what the city is doing, we're coordinating with the City of New York, so people will see this. A bill to allow judges to ban people from using the subway, people who attack others and are convicted of a violent crime. Improve coordination between police and DAs to keep violent criminals off the subways. Cameras on and in the conductor cabins, and expanding our mental health outreach teams. Here's the message today. Anyone looking to do harm or spread fear on our subways, you will be caught. Plain and simple. There will be consequences. This has to end. New Yorkers deserve no less. And to those who are feeling anxious whenever they walk through those turnstiles, we will stop at nothing to keep you safe, you and your family members, and restore your peace of mind. Now, to further talk about and amplify these efforts, I'd like to introduce Jana Lieber, and again, thank him for so quickly responding and being there on the front lines to make sure that everyone who takes the New York City subways are safe. Jana?
Last year, in the face of huge challenges, Governor Hochul stepped up for subway riders. With her budget, she rescued the system economically, protecting us from cuts in service, layoffs, and even massive fare hikes that so many transit systems nationwide are facing, for example, in New Jersey. Together with Mayor Adams, she launched the Cops Cameras in Care initiative to improve safety within the subway system, surging officers underground, challenging us at the MTA to ramp up the installation of security cameras, and bringing in new resources to help those most vulnerable New Yorkers who were sheltering in the subway system. Again and again, our governor has shown her commitment to transit safety and to our riders. That work has had an impact. Yes, although we are focusing today on the perception of safety after Cops Cameras in Care, the surge in subway crime was beaten back last year, and last year we finished not only below 2022 in crime, but below pandemic levels. But today, in response to those high-profile crimes that the governor has talked about, she is taking additional and significant actions to address the fact that riders have been put on edge by some of this news. And I think these initiatives are going to make the system actually safer and feel safer. First, on the cameras, let me underscore again. Since last year, under Governor Hochul's leadership, we have increased to 15,000 the number of cameras in the system, and we're rapidly installing cameras on board all of the trains in the system. This has never been done before. For years, that was a hole in our visibility. Now, that is being turned around, and that's already proven to allow identification and apprehension of numerous offenders. Talk to Chief Kemper of the NYPD Transit Bureau about it, the impact of cameras on his work. And now we're doing what the governor talked about, cameras in conductor cabs, because we must first and foremost address the risk to our brave transit workers. No one should have to go through what Alton Scott went through last year. I also want to emphasize the historic actions that the governor has taken on mental health already. $1 billion initiative on mental health. No one's made a priority and a commitment of that level. The SOS program, which has already taken so many hundreds of homeless people out of the system, and not least the restoration of psychiatric beds, which became unavailable during COVID. We needed those beds back, and the governor pushed the hospitals to make them available. That's why we are able now to initiate this SCOUT program. We need, it's no secret that most of the folks who are suffering with severe mental illness in the system are not dangerous. But if you're on a train with someone who's having a psychotic episode and acting out in aggressive ways, you're not going to feel safe. You're not going to feel safe. We have to humanely address the needs of those folks. And the governor is now giving us the resources to do that at scale. In recent months, the MTA has been experimenting, as the governor described, with a program which sends out clinicians who are experts in identifying severe mental severe mental illness, and utilizing the provisions of the mental health law that allow for involuntary commitment, so-called 941 and 958 provisions of the state mental health law. Thus have resulted in 75 people being put indoors to get mental health treatment, people who are the most severe cases and who are, as the governor says, a danger to themselves, as well as very potentially dangerous to others and certainly discomforting to all of the riders. That has been a really successful initiative because we're pairing those clinicians with police officers. So what happens that's different? People spend the time, those clinicians are spending whatever time is necessary to make a connection to that person, to diagnose their condition, to evaluate whether involuntary commitment is required. And because they're spending the time, because they're backed up by cops and they themselves have a sense of safety, you know what? 3/4 of those cases that have been brought inside, 3/4 of those 75 people came voluntarily, because the clinicians have the ability to spend the time and the safety. So this is an amazing model that we are excited to expand, because we all know that a very small number of those people who are struggling are having a disproportionate impact on the sense of safety in the system. And I just want to say that I am deeply moved by the opportunity it represents to address those folks who are struggling so badly, but also to make sure that our riders feel a much more safe and orderly environment. This is a huge issue. And the third element of the governor's initiative I want to emphasize is the coordination with the DAs. This is essential for transit worker safety. NYPD stats. Last year, there were 38 people arrested for subway crimes. For attacks on, there are 38 people arrested for attacks on MTA workers, for 43 separate attacks on MTA workers. And together they had over 600 prior arrests. 1% of subway arrestees, according to the NYPD, are responsible for well over 20% of the crime. We need to have a collaboration with the DAs so they have that full information about the history of these people, the impact that they have had. If they're career subway criminals, we got to make sure that everybody in the criminal justice pipeline, everyone in the chain of command, is fully aware of the consequences of just releasing this person, if that's going to happen, without discussion. And we really, really appreciate the leadership on creating a more coordinated discussion. It's essential for MTA worker safety. It's essential for MTA rider safety. And one other stat is, of those 38 arrests, there have only been 11 indictments. We have to have a dialogue about, when folks are arrested, are they actually is action being taken? And it's super important. So in closing, I just want to say, I believe that the actions the governor has announced today can have an impact not just on statistical safety, but on the perception and experience of our riders, which is essential to make New York, make New York the equity transit system that needs to be, that everybody who depends on the transit system can use it to get to jobs and education and opportunity and feel that they're in a safe environment. So thank you, Governor. We're ready to move forward on the implementation. I get to introduce Tom Taffy, who is the Chief of Operations of the MTA PD and a great partner in everything that we do in MTA law enforcement.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Thomas Taffy, the Chief of Operations for the MTA Police Department. On behalf of Chief Mueller, the Chief of Police, and the men and women of the NYPD, of the MTA Police Department, I'd like to thank both the Governor and the Chairman for their support in our shared subway safety mission. A little bit about me, because I'm a lesser-known figure here. I was born and raised in the city, in the Bronx, and I have been one of those commuters my entire life in the subway station. I've worked in law enforcement for nearly 30 years now, 27 of them in the NYPD, in the last 2 years, almost 2 years here in the MTA. So I've seen the highs and lows throughout these many generations, and I know that focus on reducing the fear of crime is as important as reducing crime itself. A focus on controlling disorder and, as was mentioned here, recidivism. Policing can be and is twofold. We can ensure that everyday rules are followed through the presence, verbal warnings, outreach, and summonsing. That's what we call the quantity. And also ensure that recidivists are identified and arrested and prosecuted. That's the quality. While our main mission in the MTA Police Department is to secure the commuter rails, since late 2019, the MTA PD has supported the NYPD in subway safety, and we've been working very closely with Chief Mike Kemper to help in that mission. And starting in late 2022, under the Governor's leadership, we have significantly increased that assistance. We now have officers in the subways in all 5 boroughs, including our hub stations in Grand Central, Penn Station, Jamaica, and Atlantic Terminal. We also have cops working with DOHMH clinicians in Manhattan, the scout teams that have been very successful, and we thank the Governor for increasing our opportunity to use those teams to help with persons in mental distress. We also work overnight in clearing the trains. We work with our homeless outreach partners in BRC and DHS, and we're in every corner in the city, even in Staten Island, on the railways. Our focus is to respond to issues that most affect the riders, the feeling of disorder, that fear of crime that I mentioned, fare evasion, persons acting violently, and emotional distress. And we work closely with the conductors and other MTA employees, who we call the Platinum Clients, since we work for the MTA ourselves, to identify the issues that concern their safety and allow them to do the jobs without fear of crime. And finally, we focus intensely on recidivism and advocate for crime victims by working closely with the DAs to build a solid case. And as you see here, it's basically every of those 5 points is something that we're being supported now by the Governor and the Chairman to do at a higher rate and more effective, especially with these scout teams. So once again, I'd like to close real quickly. Thank you, Governor and Chair, for this opportunity to let us help the NYPD and support the Subway Safety Initiative. That's it.
Okay. Anybody else want to say anything? Adriana Shields, okay. Happy to take any questions. We have the leader of our state police, the leader of our National Guard, MTA Police, Transit Police, and of course, Dana Lieber. Happy to take any questions.
All right, I'm going to try calling on folks. I know we have a lot. Let's just start here and move around. Bernadette.
Governor, where is the mayor? Governor, where is the mayor? I mean, he's in charge of the NYPD. The NYPD has been surging 1,000 cops. you're now adding additional law enforcement to the subway system. Does this mean that the NYPD will take out of the system those 1,000 cops? And do you think that he should pay, now that they have a $3.3 billion surplus, should he be paying cops overtime?
I am working in sync with the mayor of New York to protect people on the subways, the workers and the passengers. We've communicated as recently as this morning. We had a meeting last week after the horrific attack on our conductors. So we are in sync, so we are amplifying. He asked for more assistance. I said, let me figure out a plan. Part of it is something that is out of his jurisdiction, but I've asked him for his help in getting legislation passed in our state legislature to empower judges to remove people who've been convicted of a crime from using the subways. He supports that. Our DAs support that. So there are areas where I'm adding enhancements. He is continuing his work to be the primary, the NYPD is the primary law enforcement entity to protect the subways. That has not changed. He ramped up 1,000 workers. I have said I am shifting some 750 National Guard. I'm bringing them to the stations. I'm also said I will bring resources from the state police and more from the MTA police. So what you're seeing here is an act of coordination, the likes there has never been seen before, between the governor and the mayor to protect our subways.
Then why isn't he here today?
We have different schedules. We spoke yesterday. We talk about this all the time. I don't think that that's necessary, that we be standing together. He did an event this morning. I don't know how you could possibly infer that I'm not working with the mayor because we actually have a conflict of schedules today. Our schedules change all the time, Bernadette.
Andrew Ziff.
On the issue of funding the initiative, what City Hall told us yesterday was when this previous surge was very successful, there was a $62 million price tag over 4 months that the state paid for, and that when the money ran out, the city tried to do it themselves, and it fizzled. So the question is, why would you not pay for it now? Is it just simply that, look, NYPD, that's your job, we pay for other people, or is there a different reason that you're not committing to pay for the police overtime?
Rather than having the NYPD have to work being paid by state dollars, I said, let me do something even better. Let me bring more people to the process right now. I'm ramping up 1,000 people to help solve this crisis. So they just want more help. And
want more money.
And the mayor has many requests before us in our state legislature. Many, many requests. And I'm glad to see that their surpluses are looking, or their finances are looking better than they had been. But that being said, I'm going to be responding to many, many needs of the mayor and the city of New York in our budget. And so I said I can do something more immediate than a budget request. I can give you bodies right now. And I think that's actually puts us ahead of the game.
Morgan.
Good morning, Governor. Oh, thank you. So how long do you expect to use the National Guard in this initiative? How long do you expect the program to go? And then on the bag checks, how do you hope to prevent us to go back to a time of stop and frisk? And are New Yorkers allowed to refuse a bag check and leave the station and go to another station if they want to?
What I'd say is, first of all, on how long we'll be having these enhanced resources, I'm not going to telegraph to would-be criminals the date this may stop. Okay, that's not a good strategy for protecting the public. I'm not going to be saying how long this will go. It's going to go as long as we decide it's necessary. With respect to stop and frisk, it's an absolutely different dynamic than random spot checks or people who are thinking about bringing a gun or knife on the subway. At least this creates a deterrent effect. They might be thinking, you know what? It just may not be worth it because I listen to the mayor and I listen to the governor, and they have a lot more people going to be checking my bags. And so that is what we hope will happen, to stop people from doing it in the first place. I'd always rather be in the business of preventing crimes than having to solve them after the fact. That's what this initiative is about as well. So we're not looking to go up to everybody, stop and frisk. This is going to be random stops, but more it's a psychological effect on would-be wrongdoers that you may get caught, and there are severe consequences to carrying a weapon on our subways.
Okay, Marcia, next one.
But can people refuse a bag check?
Can they refuse a bag check? Well, let me ask that question. Anybody know?
They can, but they won't be allowed into the system.
Okay, they all right.
Yeah, that's,
They can refuse.
and we can refuse it.
We can refuse them.
Okay, Marcia,
They
next
can
one.
walk.
Governor, not to belabor the point, but the mayor has made it a point of pointing out that when the money stopped for the extra overtime, that what happened was the crime skyrocketed again in the subways. So the question I think a lot of people have is how long is this commitment to have the bag checks, and how long is your commitment to do all these other things? Because to them, he said that yesterday he has to make extra police in the system, what he called the new normal. And I'm wondering if you're going to be a partner with him in helping him have the new normal so that you can have more police, more bag checks, more visibility of law enforcement, and how long are you going to be a partner with him in doing that?
I think the major takeaway from today's announcement is that the governor of the state of New York is identifying and bringing to help solve the policing challenges in the subway, over 1,000 people. That is the story that's going to make riders feel a lot better. So we're helping solve a problem that the mayor has as the primary policing entity, the NYPD of the subways, but what you're seeing is an unprecedented level of cooperation to help solve this. So 1,000 people coming. I'm just not prepared to tell everybody when, if and when this is going to stop, because that is not how you deter crime, by telling the criminals, well, you might just want to take a pass for a couple months, but, May 1st, it's going to be fair. I'm not doing that. I'm not playing into that. So I assure you that we're going to be monitoring the numbers, hoping to have the effect we need to have. And certainly, summer months get very intense in the city. Under normal circumstances, we're going to be there to continue these efforts as long as necessary.
Okay, we got time for about two more, Juliet and then Samantha.
Yes, thank you. Good morning, Governor. You've talked about recidivism and the issues involved. So at what point do you and the legislature start looking at reviewing or reducing the number of crimes that currently no longer require bail? And also, you've mentioned a couple of times, including today, about judges really have to get up to speed on the bail laws. Is that going to be a formal program, a retraining? How are you implementing that?
In my view is that it should have already happened. Judges were aware that because of my insistence and the legislature agreeing ultimately that we would change the bail laws to give more discretion back to the judges that they've been asking for, as well as $40 million to help district attorneys bring more cases. So we ramped up many aspects of the system. And yes, they were required to know the law starting last May 1st. Now, to the extent that we're seeing any gaps in understanding, we've talked to the Office of Court Administration about them conducting more training, answering questions, finding out what's going wrong. But I'll tell you this, I can show you data that differs greatly between the crime rates, the arrests, convictions, prosecutions from downstate city and upstate. Radically different. Same state, same laws, different judges. That's all I can say. There is a difference that is rather shocking to know the disparity in the application of the new laws. And also with respect to more crimes being added, that's not necessary because we added a new element. If there's harm on harm, if there's an additional subsequent case of harm on an individual or property, that allows for enhanced opportunities to ask for bail. That was not there before, so that brings in many more crimes than had been eligible before if it's a repeat offender, and that's what we were going after last year.
All right, Samantha, last one.
So in terms of the legislation to keep people out of the system if they're convicted of a crime, thank you, if they're convicted of a crime of hurting another passenger, how do you enforce that? And also, you had an uphill battle with the legislature about changes to bail reform. How are you going to get this legislation through?
Well, uphill battle defines a lot that goes on in Albany, but that does not mean we should not pursue this. You know, many of these legislators represent the citizens that we're trying to protect. These are also their constituents. They are asking for help. They want to be safe on the subways. So this is simply a way of saying that, similar to the fact that you cannot drive a vehicle if you've committed a violation of our laws, that we take away your license, you don't have the privilege of being on the roads. There's no right to take our subways. It is a privilege. And if you violate that by committing a crime and harming others, it seems to me the most logical consequence is you cannot be in that position again. If you've been convicted, you should not be out there. So that is what we're hoping they'll understand. We're hoping that we can make the argument today with these individuals, but also I think it's going to be citizen-driven. The citizens should let the legislators know that they want more protections, and that'll also help make the case in the next couple weeks as we wrestle with this in Albany. So thank you.
How do you enforce that, though? How do you enforce that?
How do I enforce?
Yeah, how do the police enforce a law like that?
Go ahead.
We've had several transit bans, and in every case, when there's been a violation, the person has been identified and it's been brought to the attention of the criminal justice authorities, so the court and the DAs. So our problem has not been identifying when people violate a transit ban. It's getting the transit bans enacted in the first place, and that's what the governor's talking about.
We can do it, but as I said, the law's been in place since 2020. There are 3 known instances of that happening. They would point to a number of loopholes. We found the loopholes. We want to close the loopholes, but also expand the law that's in place right now that protects transit workers to also protecting passengers. It's a logical extension in light of what's been happening lately. So thank you, everybody. Appreciate it.
Governor, can the newspapers get a couple of questions?
What gives you confidence